On our 7th wedding anniversary, I saw a photo of my husband's stepsister at the Heartbreak Museum. Underneath was my husband's handwritten note, "Forgive me that in this life, I can only protect you as a family member." My husband sent a text, "My sister is back in the country. Let's celebrate our anniversary another time." I looked at the text and laughed. "Charles, I told you when we got married that I'm a crazy woman. You really shouldn't have provoked me." When I left the museum, it started raining heavily. I couldn't hail a cab, so, in a bad mood, I just walked and let the rain drench me. By the time I got home, I was soaked. Charles hadn't come back yet, and our daughter had already been put to sleep by the nanny. I didn't turn on the lights. The huge villa was silent. The fingerprint lock clicked open. Charles was home. I stayed seated on the couch without moving. When he turned on the light, he was startled to see me. "Why didn't you turn on the light? And why are you wet? Go dry off." Charles brought a towel to help dry me off, but I avoided his touch. Realizing I was angry, Charles sighed and softly said, "Sorry, we'll make up for the anniversary another time." But I had to pick up Fiona. Had to. "Charles, you've got some nerve." Thinking of our many years of marriage, I decided to give him an opportunity to come clean before I lost it. I looked at him coldly and asked, "Charles, who exactly is Fiona to you? Do you see her as a sister or something more?" A flicker of surprise crossed Charles' face, then his expression darkened. He threw the towel on the couch with force. "Diana, what's gotten into you?" It was too obvious. Charles was way too sensitive. When I used to get jealous over his interactions with female clients, he would just joke and say, "You better keep an eye on me, then." Now that the suspicion was about Fiona, he was losing it. Charles stood up, suppressing his anger, and said, "If you have so much time on your hands, maybe you should focus on making Dad happy. Ken's still waiting for a grandchild, you know." "Charles, I gave you a chance. You didn't take it, so don't blame me." The next day, Charles glanced at the dining table and his face sank. "Auntie, where's my Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee?" Charles, being the spoiled young master, needs a cup of hand-brewed Blue Mountain coffee every morning. No response. Charles called out a few more times. So annoying. I wiped my mouth and got up. "Stop calling. I sent Auntie to take Gloria to kindergarten. Today, I'll go to the office with you." I took Charles' car keys. "What about my breakfast?" I pushed yesterday's packed meal towards him. It was a fancy Western meal I had ordered. "Can't let it go to waste. Honey, this is your punishment." Charles' face stiffened, but knowing he was in the wrong, he didn't argue. I turned around, a smirk on my lips. I waited in Charles' Maybach. When his hand touched the door handle, I suddenly floored the gas pedal. The car shot forward, and Charles got startled, falling to the ground. In the rearview mirror, I saw Charles running after the car. I stuck my hand out the window and waved at him. I glanced at the car keys beside me. No driving for him today. It's rush hour, so I doubt he could even get a cab. I left him an e-bike. After being the spoiled rich guy for so long, it's time he experienced some hardships. "Charles, the game has just begun." But after just a few steps, Charles squatted down and curled up to go back. The drug effect was just as I expected. Charles must be freaking out now, as his dear Fiona is still waiting at the company. Charles wanted Fiona to replace me. Shirley from the HR department told me about it. Shirley is my trusted confidant, someone I personally promoted. Seeing Charles and Fiona's relationship, I had a feeling this return wasn't simple, but I didn't expect Charles to be so eager. What, did he think I was dead? After enjoying the luxurious life for so long, did he really think I was a docile and tolerant wife? 2.5 hours later, Charles showed up. In my office, I was leaning back in my chair, resting my eyes. Shirley whispered in my ear, "Diana, Charles is here." God knows what happened to him today. When he arrived, his clothes were damp in the back, and he reeked of cologne. Damp clothes must be from sweat. Cologne, to cover up a stink, perhaps. To Shirley's shocked gaze, I stood up and walked out of the office. Sure enough, Charles couldn't wait to announce Fiona's arrival, and he gave me a vicious glare. "Starting today, Miss Fiona will take over Diana's director position. Let's welcome her to the H Group family." Charles led the applause, but no one followed. Bringing in an outsider to lead is a big no-no in the workplace, especially since many of the original H Group seniors left and took a bunch of old employees with them. Now, most of the current employees were brought in by me using my headhunting connections. They came here because they trusted me, so they naturally weren't happy with this decision. In the dead silence, my applause stood out. Everyone gave me strange looks, not understanding what I was doing. "Welcome, Fiona." But honey, putting Fiona in my position, isn't that underutilizing her talents? How about letting Fiona take your position, Charles? As I clapped my hands and moved closer to Fiona, I leaned in and whispered coldly in her ear, "Fiona, how do you think you're doing? Charles frowned at me and pulled Fiona behind him protectively. Fiona gave me a resentful glare and lowered her head, muttering quietly, Charles, forget it. This position isn't right for me. Already backing down. So boring. Just an hour ago, Fiona wasn't behaving at all. She was sitting in my boss's chair, filing her nails. She taunted, Diana, this has nothing to do with you. Leave while you can still save face. Save face? Sorry, that's the last thing I care about. I walked to the desk in my high heels, took off my Rolex from my wrist. I grabbed Fiona by the hair and dragged her to the office bathroom. What are you doing? Fiona grimaced in pain. I turned on the faucet and blocked the drain. Then I forced Fiona's face into the water. She struggled in pain. Admiring her twisted face, I said, you want me to leave? Who do you think you are? I yanked her hair back and Fiona's face turned red. Black eyeliner smudged on her face, gasping like a ghost. Diana, Fiona screamed in fury. I pushed her into the water again, repeatedly. When I finally let go, Fiona was trembling over the sink. Diana, Charles won't let this go. I scoffed, leaning in to pat her cheek. Try taking my position if you dare. You believe I won't shove your head into the toilet? Fiona shivered and backed away, her face filled with terror, shaking her head wildly. I wiped my hands and picked up Fiona's Hermes bag. I opened it and dumped all its contents into the trash. Diana, are you crazy? This was a gift from Charles, right? I'm confiscating it. It's marital property. A few days ago, I picked up a bag from the Hermes store. The saleswoman mentioned Charles had ordered a bag. I waited and waited, only to find out he gave it to this bitch. I lifted Fiona's face and flicked her forehead. And you were right. I am crazy. Fiona's face twisted in despair, not daring to speak further. Fiona's induction ceremony was completely ruined. Charles gently had an assistant escort Fiona out. The next moment, he stormed into the office to confront me. Diana, what do you mean by this? This company is mine. It's none of your business what I do here. I shrugged indifferently, sipped my Blue Mountain coffee, and went back to reading documents. Charles got even angrier and swept the documents off the table, glaring. Everyone's so disobedient. I picked up my coffee. Weren't you ranting about some coffee? Here you go. Diana, Charles snapped, then lowered his voice, mindful of being in the office. The office walls were glass. Charles wiped his face and quickly pulled the curtains. Just like his father, can't bear to lose face. Always more concerned with appearances than anything else. I could see Charles clenching his teeth. Diana, what are you doing? I grabbed some tissues to wipe the coffee off the documents. What a pity, I have to print these again. I don't like you and Fiona. So what? You? Charles glanced at the curtains and said, we'll talk about this at home. Fiona may not have many talents, but her mouth is sharp. As soon as I got off work, I received a call from Ken asking me to come to the family house. I needed to see what they were up to. At the family house, Fiona and her mom, Lucy, were sitting beside Ken, looking ready for a showdown. Ken, what's going on? A string of sandalwood prayer beads fell at my feet. You think the company is a place for your tantrums. You've embarrassed our entire family. Ken is a traditional man. Face and offspring are everything to him. With him around, Fiona and Charles could never be together. And me. I was just a tool for Charles to maintain his appearance of a proper life. I never understood how someone from a wealthy family like Charles could be interested in an orphan like me. Back then, he insisted on being with me despite family pressure. Now, I get it. An orphan, with no ties, can cause no trouble. Even if the truth comes out, what does it matter? I looked at Fiona and gave a sinister smile. She got creeped out, tugging on Lucy's sleeve. Why are you looking? A person without parents, of course, has no manners. Ken, if Diana's this arrogant now, she'll walk all over Charles in the future. Lucy added fuel to the fire, while Ken's face grew darker and Fiona smirked. Bring the family rules. I cracked my knuckles and started walking toward them, ready to lose it when someone called out. Mommy, Gloria shouted sweetly, hugging my leg. Why is Gloria here? My expression softened immediately as I patted her head. Charles had come in with Gloria. Gloria, let Auntie Fiona hold you. Fiona hugged and kissed my daughter, making me want to chop her hands off. Gloria, how about Mom gives you a little brother? Hearing this, Ken's expression relaxed a bit. He said sternly, Gloria is already 6. When are you guys having a second child? Ask her. Charles didn't defend me and shifted the blame onto me. Pathetic. With his scrawny self. Gloria is a kid who needs security. She thinks having a brother means I'll abandon her. Now she was on the verge of tears. These people were doing this on purpose, knowing I wouldn't act out in front of my child. I picked up Gloria and walked towards the door. Diana, what are you doing? Charles tried to stop me, but I pushed him aside. Diana, Diana, they shouted, but I ignored them. 20 minutes later, Shirley took Gloria from my hands. I turned and walked into the villa, grabbing the weed killer from the garden. It's not my fault, you forced me. That day, I gave their entire family a bath with the weed killer. Seeing them scatter like rats was immensely satisfying. Yeah, in their eyes, they never saw Gloria and me as part of the family. A low-status daughter-in-law, unworthy of integrating into their high and mighty lives. An unappreciated granddaughter, not deserving of her grandpa's love. On New Year's Eve, they sat around enjoying themselves. I held Gloria, watching the fireworks outside, lulling her to sleep. Gloria once asked me, "Mom, does Grandpa not like me?" I said, "Of course not, Grandpa just has a stern face." Back then, I secretly thought, as long as I raised Gloria to be excellent enough, they'd change their minds. "I'm sorry, Gloria. Mom was wrong. People who don't like you will never like you, no matter what you do." Just like I, after being a good wife and mother for 7 years, can't even compare to one of Fiona's fingers. Men, they're just scumbags. But it's okay, starting today, I will prepare everything for Gloria. Reclaim what should have belonged to us. After my lesson, they didn't dare provoke me again. Charles also moved out of the house, which brought me peace. If he didn't leave, I'd still chase him away. After all, I find him dirty. The marriage definitely needs to end, but I won't settle for less money. In the first week, I thoroughly checked the company's books. I found several accounts that didn't match over the years. This money was transferred to an overseas account, either into Fiona's pocket, or Charles was trying to move assets. Another possibility is that Charles wanted to start his own business. I instantly understood. No wonder the company hasn't been doing well these past few years, yet Charles wasn't worried. He never intended to take over H Group from his father. By the time he spreads his wings, Ken will no longer have any power over him. He and Fiona would have no obstacles. And Gloria and I are just pawns to be discarded. Charles, oh Charles, just to be with Fiona, you calculated against your own father. The game just got more fun. It's fine, I'll reverse the ending. I dislike talking nonsense and will use the simplest, most direct methods to achieve my goals. I went straight to Ken with Charles' matters, left no room for face-saving, laying out all the evidence. Charles's ambitions, Charles and Fiona. Lucy was so scared, she hid in the kitchen, afraid to come out. Ken's face fell, wrinkles almost reaching his mouth. He took several deep breaths. I feared a heart attack. That'd be boring. He finally squeezed out a sentence. What do you want? True to the shameless family, his son is at fault, and they turned to ask what I want. Lucy shakily approached and cajoled, "Dear, Charles and Fiona." They were momentarily confused. Ken backhanded her. "Get lost. Look at the good daughter you've raised." That slap was with full force. Lucy clutched her face and collapsed to the ground, teary-eyed, not daring to speak. "My demands are simple. Get the assets Charles transferred back. Then divorce, and I want Charles penniless." As if hearing something incredible, Ken laughed. "Diana, you dare to ask that? Why? Disagree? Then I'll slowly play you all to death." "Diana, a woman should be virtuous. Just tolerate this matter. Know your place." I spat tea leaves onto Ken's face. "You know nothing." With the truth exposed, Charles and Fiona didn't bother hiding from me anymore. To keep Fiona by his side, he even fired the secretary, who had followed him for 10 years. Just because she's a woman, and he feared Fiona's jealousy. Then he'd drive to work with Fiona, separating in the parking lot. They're all about the thrill. Doesn't matter, I'll go crazy. When Fiona would flirt in Charles's office, I'd barge in and slap her, reminding her of her place. When Charles waited for Fiona after work in the parking lot, I'd intentionally make Fiona stay late to make coffee and organize files for me. Meeting Fiona in the women's restroom, I'd lock her in, scaring Charles enough to almost break into the women's room. If they dared to say a word against me, I'd shout mistress, and they wouldn't dare make a peep. Within a week, Fiona disappeared from the company, but I didn't expect her return would bring such a big surprise. The company finished a major project, so I, along with Charles, took the employees out to celebrate. Under dim lights, the room was lively. I twisted my wedding ring, enjoying the rush of alcohol. Feeling Charles's stiffness beside me, I couldn't help but laugh. After playing the role of a loving couple for so many years, he couldn't keep it up once Fiona was back. All night, Charles was acting strange, checking his phone occasionally. Suddenly, he stood up abruptly from the couch and hurried away. Around the corner, I saw a hand pull him in, red nails particularly striking in the light. Unfazed, I got up and quietly followed. Through a door, I couldn't hear their whispers. Then, Charles let out a few stifled grunts. That sound was familiar. It signaled his arousal. The sounds became more obscene. A few spectators passing by were scared off by my glare. The mirror reflected my darkened expression. I thought I didn't care anymore, but the scratch marks on my skin clearly reminded me. Diana, you still feel pain. Charles, you don't know, in the orphanage they called me a lunatic. Sparse social donations weren't enough to support our lives. Older kids, hungry, would snatch food from the younger ones. Once, 2 older kids dragged me into a storage room. They stole my food, so I jumped up and bit one of them on the arm. He screamed in pain, and I wasn't much better off. One of them yanked my hair while the other punched and kicked me. It hurt a lot. My whole body ached, but I knew I couldn't let go. I couldn't let them see me weak. When we were finally found and separated, I had a bald patch and was diagnosed with a minor concussion. The other kid almost lost a chunk of flesh from my bite, and he ended up with a permanent scar. He cried loudly, but I held back my tears. Since then, I grew up safely in the orphanage, until I met Charles, who was humble, polite, and patient. After I rejected him, he would quietly wait for me on my way back from work every day, not getting too close or disturbing me. He would silently escort me to my dorm building and then leave. Later, he even put aside his wealthy heirs to work with me at a street food stall. His branded clothes got stained with grease and food. He was, after all, a rich kid and clumsy at work. At first, he kept breaking plates. The boss wanted to fire him several times, but his good looks drew so many girls that it boosted business. So the boss asked me to help him out more. His kindness softened my rough edges. I thought he was my salvation, but I didn't expect he would push me into another abyss. I wasn't happy, and I wouldn't let others be either. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the corner and smashed it against the door. Fiona screamed. Soon, Charles came out, disheveled and panting. After a while, Fiona walked out too, boldly displaying marks on her neck as if showing off to me. I adjusted my hair and ran a hand over her neck. Fiona flinched, and goosebumps appeared on her skin. Charles stood there, looking guilty. I curled my fingers, digging my nails into Fiona's flesh. She screamed immediately. I left a nasty scratch. You should suffer like I did. Charles tried to stop me, but I warned him. If you don't want me to make that recording public, don't interfere. Charles, the coward, just stood there watching me bully Fiona. It reminded me of how Ken humiliated Lucy right in front of me. Charles inherited his dad's selfish hypocrisy. I had to teach Fiona a lesson. Before leaving, I struck one last blow. Using my hairpin, I cut a hole in Charles' pants, right on the backside. Charles rushed into the bathroom, telling Fiona to buy him new pants. His embarrassed rush made my gloom disappear. I laughed and clapped my hands as I walked around the corner. A colleague asked what happened. Nothing, just saw something funny. When Charles returned to his seat, we were playing truth or dare. I drew a dare card. It said to kiss one of the guys in the room. People started teasing. Charles looked at me confidently and smugly, which disgusted me. I raised my chin and said, David, kiss Fiona. The mood instantly shifted. Nobody teased anymore. Charles stared at me in disbelief. He grabbed my wrist, dropped a card, and pulled me up. Diana was just kidding. We've got to go. Have fun. After walking a bit out of the bar, I shook off his hand. Let go, you're filthy. Charles put his hands on his hips, his chest heaving in anger. He paced back and forth. Diana, what do you mean? I pouted and rubbed my wrist, red from his grip. He had grabbed it where I had scratched myself earlier, making it swell more. Say something. I dug into his pocket, pulled out his cigarette pack and matches. He had a habit of lighting cigarettes with matches. I struck a match, and the flame lit the tip of the cigarette, smudging it with my lipstick. I blew a smoke ring at Charles. What do I mean? Equality. If you can play around, why can't I? I stubbed out the cigarette on his tailored suit, leaving a burn mark. Charles shoved me away hard. You're crazy. I suggest you recover the transferred assets in a week, or I can get crazier. I went home exhausted. In the quiet night, I heard soft sobs and rushed upstairs. Gloria was curled up in bed, tears in her eyes. Probably a nightmare. I gently patted her back. Gloria suddenly opened her eyes and softly called out, Mommy. I turned on the night light, and she cried harder. She grabbed my hand and blew on the scratch, asking between sobs, Mommy, does it hurt? I patted her head. Don't cry, baby. Mommy's not hurt. Mommy, Gloria doesn't want Daddy anymore. Please don't get hurt again, okay? It felt like my heart got hit, and my mind went blank. I stopped mid-pat. I hugged Gloria tightly, tears streaming down my face. How could it be? My Gloria knew everything. I forced myself to calm down and asked, Gloria, who told you? Aunt said Mommy and Daddy are getting a divorce. Mommy, I'm scared. Messing with Gloria was like stabbing my heart. Fiona, you've got it coming. After comforting Gloria back to sleep, I collapsed on the couch, motionless. Cold moonlight spilled through the window. Just a few months ago, this place was full of laughter. Every morning, I would fix Charles's tie, and he would kiss my forehead. Gloria would cling to Charles, wanting him to carry her downstairs. At the dining table, Gloria was chirping away. Charles and I exchanged helpless looks, then smiled indulgently at her. Warm milk, yogurt oatmeal, and Blue Mountain coffee were all served in family-themed cups. The designs of daughter, mom, and dad lined up in a row. How did it come to this? Ken told me to be smart. Charles said all the men in this circle are like this. Even the dean advised me, saying it wasn't easy for an orphan to come this far. Yeah, it wasn't easy at all. So apart from Charles, I wanted everything. On the last day of the week's deadline, I didn't see Charles putting the assets back in place. Instead, the nanny told me that Charles had taken Gloria away. Charles, where's Gloria? I grabbed his collar and demanded. Charles pried my hand off and said flatly, with your current mental state, I doubt you're capable of taking care of Gloria. Do you believe I'll kill you? I believe it, but you'll never see Gloria again. Charles, using your own daughter as a bargaining chip, that's all you've got. Want to see Gloria? Come with me. I followed Charles to the underground garage, and during a brief moment, I sent a message to Shirley. Go to the villa. The documents are in the drawer on the left side of the office. Charles drove me to his and Fiona's love nest. Fiona was sitting on the sofa, biting into cherries and spitting a pit in my direction. Charles walked towards her, and Fiona flung herself on him, clinging to his arm. She cooed, "You're so good." Charles, unusually, ignored her, pushed her off, and sat on the sofa. Pressing his fingers to his temples, he spoke wearily, I brought her here. Stop making trouble from now on. Whatever she did to you before, do it back to her today. Fiona did. She slapped me and pushed my head into the sink. Charles had no reaction. He just sat there, eyes closed, escaping reality, as if not seeing it meant it wasn't happening. Fiona taunted, Diana, know your place. You'll never be as good as a single finger of mine. For Gloria, I had to endure. Luckily, the pain didn't last long. Ken kicked the door in with his men. Charles, you unfilial son. Fiona, what are you doing? Ken roared, making Fiona stop, and Charles stood up, both in shock. A few minutes later, stepmother Lucy covered me with a blanket, and respectfully fed me bird's nest soup. Charles and Fiona knelt on the ground. Look at what you two have done. Do you think I'm dead? If anything happens to my grandchild, I won't forgive you. Dad, what are you talking about? Diana's pregnant, didn't you know? Yes, that was the information I had Shirley send over. Charles widened his eyes at me. Why didn't you say it earlier? He lowered his head and whispered, I'm sorry. If I had known, I wouldn't have. I grabbed the bird's nest soup and splashed it on Charles. If sorry was enough, why do we need the police? This child isn't even wanted. After they are born, they'll face a cheating father. I think it's better if they don't come into this world. No, don't be ridiculous. Diana, I know what you're up to. You called me here to make me stand up for you. You too, cut it out now. Ken hit Charles' back with his cane, making his face turn pale. It's not enough. I have two more demands. First, Charles must transfer all the assets back into my private account for me to manage. Second, without my permission, no one is allowed to take Gloria away. Charles hadn't fully grown his wings yet and still relied on Ken's authority to keep his position stable. Besides, he did want a son. Charles agreed to everything. I rested my chin on my hand and pouted. But I'm still very upset. If a pregnant woman is in a bad mood, it would probably affect the baby, right? I acted troubled while looking at Fiona. Unexpectedly, Lucy stepped forward first and slapped Fiona. Fiona, you've disappointed your father and me too much. This hurt Charles badly. He wanted to protect her, but didn't dare move under my gaze. Lucy's slap wasn't in vain. Ken looked at Lucy with newfound appreciation. Taking a step back to go forward, Ken must think Lucy is a sensible woman. It seemed, Lucy managed to marry Ken as a showgirl with Fiona, not without reason. At least, she understood Ken's temperament very well. Fiona, compared to your mother, you're really lacking. And Charles, if Charles had half his dad's brains, he wouldn't be spun around by you. Charles's transferred assets finally ended up in my account, after going through rounds. At Ken's request, I temporarily left the company to rest and take care of my pregnancy at home. Before leaving, I took a document from the safe. Once, I thought I'd keep the secret forever buried in my heart. Now, looking back, maybe it's all part of heaven's plan. During the pregnancy, Charles visited me once. He didn't look too good. Fatigue was etched deeply on his face. Without anyone to help him with his outfit, he dressed quite strangely, lacking his usual spirit. He said, Diana, let's stop fighting, okay? I've cut ties with Fiona. Don't make things hard for her anymore. She had a tough childhood with Lucy. After coming to our house, she's always been cautious. I used to tease her, but she never complained and even spoke up for me when things went wrong. Diana, Fiona, enough. I'm not interested in hearing your love story. I still stand by my words. Divorce, and you leave with nothing. Charles squinted his eyes. Diana, that's impossible. Then we have nothing more to talk about. I turned around, but Charles hugged me tightly. There's always a difference in strength between men and women. I gave up struggling, and he choked up. This whole time, I felt like something was missing, like there was an emptiness in my heart. Taking advantage of his moment of weakness, I kicked him. He grimaced in pain and let go. In the afternoon, Larry, the secretary Charles had fired, brought me what I wanted. I handed him a check. You've worked hard all these years. It's H Group that let you down. I wrote you a recommendation letter. I wish you a bright future. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but I still felt uneasy. I had a sense that something was going to happen. Turns out, nothing is more accurate than a woman's intuition. The day Lucy came into the house with Fiona, I was sunbathing in the yard. The mother and daughter stood proudly in front of me, with an aunt carrying bags of stuff behind them. Lucy had a smile on her face, but it was ice cold, like a snake flicking its tongue. It sent chills down my spine. Diana, your father asked me to come take care of you. Now that both you and Fiona are pregnant, he's worried. How refreshing and funny. The two of them looked at me in surprise. Diana, you think being pregnant makes you better than me? Charles loves me. He married you because you were easy to deal with. One day, I will be his wife. Lucy sure is something, convincing Ken like that. Interesting. Fiona is pregnant. Then why are you still standing? Sit down, rest a bit, don't tire yourself. I dialed Shirley's number. Shirley, help me get Ken and Charles here. Tell them, if they don't come, they might as well prepare to collect their grandson's corpses. I clapped my hands, and a few wolf dogs sprang from the backyard, barking at Fiona and Lucy. They fell to the ground in fear. Sorry, be nice. They bite people, not dogs. Charles and Ken arrived almost simultaneously. Charles rushed in, his hair all messed up. I shrugged. She said she's pregnant. What should we do? Charles tried to grab my hand, but I avoided him. Diana, listen to me. Diana, a woman should know the bigger picture. I promise you, once the child is born, I'll let you raise it. Just stop this. How funny, really too funny. I laughed so hard I couldn't stand up straight, tears streaming down my face. Diana, don't be like this. Acting crazy. How does that look? While laughing, I clapped my hands and took out some documents from the house, throwing them at Charles. Charles, all these years you've been going abroad every month on business trips, but it was really to see Fiona, right? Do you know that your body has been worn out for a while? This is your health report from a year ago. Take a look yourself. See if you can still father a grandchild. Oh, and I'm not pregnant either. Charles shakily opened the file, and the next second, he pounced on Fiona like a beast. Charles gripped Fiona's neck tightly, eyes glaring. I treated you so well. How dare you betray me? No, Charles, you're being deceived. Whose is it? Speak. It's Jason, right? You abandoned me back then to go abroad with him. Jason is already married. Don't you have any shame? Charles roared, pushing Fiona away. Fiona clutched her throat, gasping. Charles stormed out. Ken raised his cane, intending to hit Fiona. Such a disgrace. But in the end, he couldn't handle it and clutched his chest, supported by Lucy. Ken, are you okay? It's all Fiona's doing. I didn't know. Amazing. Truly amazing. This drama in the wealthy circles would be unforgettable. Lucy frantically called for an ambulance, while Fiona crawled to her, begging not to be abandoned. I turned and went inside, shutting the door, blocking out the noise. I wanted to rest for a bit since it wasn't too late, but then I got a call from the hospital, informing me that Charles had been in a car accident. Miss Diana, Mr. Charles is in surgery now. The injury is quite severe, and we need the family's consent. Funny how Charles originally just lost his ability, but now is totally ruined. They asked if I wanted to preserve anything. I said, no need, isn't it urgent? Then do it, cut it off. After hanging up, I went to see Charles at the hospital. The doctor said he also had brain nerve damage, and might not speak properly again. Looking at someone I once loved so deeply, lying there in ICU with tubes all over. It's hard to describe the feeling. Ken also collapsed, having a stroke. With his mouth twisted, he struggled to speak. Where did you hide Gloria? Ken, today I'm here to make a deal with you. Transfer all your shares to me, and from now on I'll be in charge of H Group. I promise to take care of you in your old age, and cover Charles' medical expenses. If you don't agree, I'll reveal Charles' work mistakes. Let the board decide everything. If you agree, just raise your hand and I'll give you the seal ink. Ken closed his eyes, tears flowing down. After a long while, he extended his age-spotted hand. In that moment, he He seemed to have lost all the fierce aura he once had in the business world. Now, he was just a helpless old man. Everything was over. As for Lucy and her daughter, they were kicked out by Ken long ago. They spread scandalous stories about Ken and Charles everywhere, tarnishing the reputation they held so dearly. But these rumors did cause trouble for H Group. I had to pull several all-nighters to handle it. But before I could take any action, Jason's wife took care of the mother and daughter for me. That lady was tougher than me. I heard Fiona even had her womb removed. Since then, I heard no more about them. Life was busy afterward, but whenever I had time, I'd take Gloria to the orphanage for charity work. I donated a lot of money, even building a new orphanage. Holding Gloria's hand, we walked out of the orphanage, the sunset's glow warming the children's faces. They smiled so happily, much more adorable than when I was their age. If I could, I'd really wish for a world without crazy women like me. Behind all the madness, there's only sorrow. Life never gave me a way out.